Hello everybody. Today we're going to be going through installing Windows 10 inside of a Linux environment. I'm actually sitting here in a Manjaro instance. Manjaro is actually on my daily driver. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, mainly because I didn't have YouTube in mind when I installed it. And we are going to go through and we are going to create a virtual machine for Windows 10, and we're going to install Windows 10 onto the system and basically have it boot up and ready to go. Given that one of my earliest videos was installing Linux, in that case Ubuntu, onto Windows 10, I thought it fitting to sort of return the favour. Now this is going to be of benefit for users that have migrated across from Windows 10 but maybe still have some apps that they need to use. It's not going to be very good for gamers. I don't recommend trying to do this for gaming, because unless you've got a second video card that you can use as a pass-through, the games are just not going to be performant. It'll be slower because you're running a virtualized machine. It doesn't have direct access to the hardware, and there is going to be some performance degradation. If you've got the second card and you've got a more powerful machine, you could try it. It might work for you, but I really wouldn't recommend it over having a dual boot in that circumstance to run the games. But if you're wanting to use some Windows application that only runs in Windows, we're talking your Adobe suite such as Photoshop or Illustrator, or maybe you're using Microsoft Office applications, or maybe you've got a proprietary bit of software that a company's released and they haven't released a Linux version for yet. This is a way around that, where you can actually use Linux still as your daily driver, and you can just boot up a virtual machine of Windows 10 to run that application. So I'm just going to show you how to get the machine started. I'm not planning on keeping it, so I'm not going to be assigning a very large hard drive to it in this case. And I'm also not going to be going through a lot of the options in VirtualBox. I went through a lot of those options in my first video. I recommend you check that out. So today we're just going to get straight in, create the virtual machine, create the hard drive, get the ISO on there, and then start the install process. So let's get to it, let's get cracking. So here we are in VirtualBox. We're going to open up a new machine. I don't want to open a new machine, I want to create a new machine. I'm going to call it Windows 10, because I'm very unoriginal when it comes to my naming conventions. Yep, I want it on that location. I'm going to assign it, I've got lots of RAM, so I'm going to assign it 8 gig. But obviously in your case you would assign it as much RAM as you actually need to assign it. So if you've got an application which is very RAM intensive, you would assign more RAM. If you've got an application which doesn't need a lot, you won't assign much RAM at all. Yes, I want to create a virtual hard drive. I'm just going to create it as VDI. Next. I don't know that you can see this. I'm going to go fixed size, and I'm going to assign 50 gig. You'll assign whatever is relevant for you. And hey presto, there's our 50 gig hard drive. Just making sure that you guys can see that. It doesn't look like it's coming through. Why is that not coming through? Okay, so here we go. We've got a hard drive. It's showing 4.91 gig. It's actually 50 gig in size. Sorry for the hard drive, the SATA port 0. And then we've got the optical drive, which is our ISO that we're going to boot up from. So I'm just going to hide that now. And kick off our virtual machine. And because I forgot to do that, just quickly set this how I want it. Okay, so what's happened here is I have picked the wrong ISO. Let's try that again, shall we? That's looking a little bit more promising. Okay, so I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. I think most of the people will be comfortable with the Windows 10 interface, so a lot of it is just going to be very familiar. You'll choose your language. English US is fine for me. Time and currency, English US is fine for me. Keyboard input method, US is fine for me. So I'm just going to click next. I'm going to install, not looking to repair. Okay. If you know your product key, if you've got it stuck to a sticker on the side of your computer, for instance, you would enter it here. However, if you have already removed Windows 10 from your installation, don't panic, because when you click on I don't have a product key, one of the first questions it will ask you to do is to sign on with your Microsoft account. Your product key is tied to your primary Microsoft account if you have a registered product. So I'm just going to click on I don't have a product key because I don't have one with me. I do happen to know that my product key is Windows 10 Pro, but you can pick any of them. Now, I don't know if anyone has ever bothered to read all of this. There's some really scary things in here. There's a lot of legal things basically saying if you're not going to use it, you've got to take it back to your retailer, and you don't own the software, you license it. So you don't actually own Windows 10, believe it or not. You've got the Windows 10 operating system installed on the hardware that you have purchased, but you do not own it. You cannot do anything with it. It's all owned by Microsoft. This is one of the reasons why I prefer Linux. Now, not everyone's going to want to bash around on their UI, but I don't like being dictated to by a company that has the ability to do what they want on a computer that I use daily, particularly when I might be in the middle of doing something very important when they decide to do it. That's just personal preference. Just not going to go into that any further, so we'll just click next. We're going to install Windows only. Upgrade would work, except for the fact that we've actually got a virtual hard drive that has nothing on it, so there is no files to keep, settings to keep, or applications to keep, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. We're just going to click on new to create the partitions, accept the default. So basically what I've done there is I've said, yep, just create a partition for as big as you can and just throw everything onto it. It's now telling me that it's going to create a couple of other partitions for a restore file and a boot sector, that sort of thing. So we'll accept that. Next. The installation itself is now running. I'm actually very impressed with this. It only takes about 15, maybe 20 minutes to get Windows 10 installed once you've clicked that final button. There's a little bit of configuration at the end, setting up user accounts and the like, but by and large, I'm pretty impressed. Yeah, I don't want to wait 10 seconds. I don't want to boot from the DVD now. And it's rebooting again. Okay, well, I'm not actually in the US, but I'm going to accept it because I can. Yes, I'm using a US keyboard. No, I do not want to wait a second. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here because I don't think I swallowed the sound on this, so it's possible that Cortana is going to pop up and try and talk to me, which would be most unfortunate. So I'm just going to disable that on the machine itself. Hopefully I caught it in time. Personal use. Okay, now I'm going to create this as an offline account. If you already had a Microsoft account, you can enter the details in here and sign on online. It will automatically authenticate, which is why I don't want to do it. I don't want to use up one of my re-authentications. So I'm going to create an offline account with limited experience. I'm going to give it my normal name, my super secure password, and I'm just going to create some security questions. Doesn't really matter what they are because this is never going to get queried of me, and even if they did, as you can see, I'm setting fairly easy answers. Now, this is just what Microsoft tells you about in terms of what they're going to monitor you on. Personally, I would turn everything off, and I'm going to be turning everything off on this. It's a virtual machine. I'm not really going to be spending any time in it, so for me that's fine. For you, I suggest you read each of those options and make a choice. Do more across devices with activity history. No, I do not want them to track everything I do and tailor ads to my wants and needs. No, I don't want Cortana to help me. Again, these are my decisions. Your mileage may vary. So we've now been going for 17 minutes. That includes my introduction and the mess up with the ISO. It's probably got another 3 or 4 minutes to go before the first boot is ready and I'm signed in. So it's pretty quick. The Ubuntu installation that I did on my first video, just for comparison's sake, took 22 minutes under a virtual machine. Now, I was explaining everything every step of the way, whereas this one I've kind of rushed through it a little bit, because really my target audience is a little bit different for this video. So we'll just see exactly how long this takes. Leave everything to us. Yeah, not if I can help it. Thanks. Almost there. And here we are. We're now in Windows. So first thing I'm going to do is set my screen resolution to be the screen resolution that is a little bit more pleasurable for you guys. It is going to get rid of all the greenery in the background though, so I don't know, maybe that's a mixed blessing for you. Display settings. Resolution, give me 1080, 1920, what? That's interesting. No, 1920 by 1080. Wonder why that is. The first thing that we need to do is to type in a command, which is vbox manage set extra data. The name of the VM goes in here, which in my case is Windows 10 with my nice and unoriginal naming convention. Then we tell it that we need to input a custom video model and what we want that to be. Now in this case it's going to be 1920 by 1080 by 32. We enter it. It doesn't give any feedback. That means it works. If it gave feedback back, the feedback would be there's a problem with your command, and I can actually demonstrate that by giving a false VM name. In this case it's telling me, hey, there's no VM with that name, and we can see now that there is indeed a 1920 by 1080. So I select that. I want to keep the changes. Let's start up Edge and use it for the only thing that Edge is actually good for. Of course, that is installing Google Chrome. No, I don't want to install the new Microsoft Edge because even though it's Chromium based, it is still Microsoft Edge. No, I don't want to send everything, but do give me Chrome. Run. Okay, so I've now got a decent web browser. Now that I have got a decent web browser, the next thing I would probably go searching for would be my mail client or my Office tools if I'm using this for Microsoft Office 365, which of course includes Outlook. I would go through that portal for that, which is of course Office 365 sign in. And you just go through here. Or I would access my webmail, just for the sake of the argument. Or of course, Hotmail or whatever it is that you're using. You can just access all that through the web browser. If you had a particular product that you needed to install, say from a USB key, you can do that through the virtual machine, enabling the USB key to be forwarded through. And I think really you've got enough now to get started. So that's it, guys. So if you liked the video, hit like. If you didn't, hit the dislike button. I'm quite happy with how this went, given that we had some errors, a couple of false starts. And yeah, please comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.